Welcome everyone to episode 8 of Fins Up Podcast. I'm your host Chad Martin. With me is JC Martin. Have to get that last name in there. Everybody ought to know that by now though. And guess what? It's probably going to be on the bottom of the screen too. So we're here to talk about Ole Miss's absolute destruction of the Georgia Bulldogs last Saturday and their upcoming destruction and revenge match against the Memphis Tigers this Saturday.
Yeah, Ole Miss went out there with Georgia this past Saturday. They got up early and did what they should have done against Florida State and Alabama. They put their foot on the throat and they kept it there.
And we talked about that was going to be one of the keys is to do that and not let up. And boy, did they ever. I mean, they just throttled Georgia from start to finish.
Right. I mean, they, to quote The Rock here, they put boots to asses and for 60 minutes.
And it showed you what they can do.
Absolutely.
When they make their mind up to do something.
And, Memphis, you talked about how Memphis won that game last year, so this is kind of a revenge game, even though Ole Miss kind of leads the series all the time. But, Memphis isn't going to have Paxton Lynch.
Yep.
He's playing for the Broncos now. They don't have Justin Fuente at head coach. They got Mike Norvell, who actually seems like he's gotten this thing on a good
they're putting up some points this year.
But they're not playing anybody.
That is true.
Like we
said that about Georgia also.
The only school that they've played that's in a Power 5 conference is Kansas, and as everyone knows, Kansas is the cellar dweller of the Big 12.
There you go.
So, yeah, you put up 77 points, but it was on Bowling Green. That's not impressive.
That's right.
That's an expected behavior. You should do that to a team of Bowling Green's nature. So Ole Miss is going to come out there. They're going to be hungry again, like last week. They're going to be pissed off, and they're going to play hard. They're going to play fast, and they're going to play furious for 60 minutes.
Oh yeah, because you know that Ole Miss has been circling this game for a year now too.
Right.
Knowing they let this one get away from them last year and shouldn't have. Ole Miss was clearly the better team last year, and just after that Alabama game,
jumped out to a 14-point lead last year before they choked that away.
Exactly. If they continue to play disciplined football, and we'll get into Memphis here in just a little bit, but that's going to be one of the keys. Good news is Jordan Sims was named Southeastern Conference Offensive Lineman of the Week.
Congrats, Jordan.
Which is awesome. Earned it, helping Chad Kelly stay clean in the pocket. Open up a few running holes this time. I mean, King Judd ran real well this weekend, so a lot of good things. We're going to get to this game here in just a minute. First, we're going to talk about the women's soccer team. They fell to Arkansas 2-1 this past weekend. Their next match is going to be on October 1st, so that is, good grief, that is what, Saturday?
Yes, it is.
I believe it is Saturday. So they're taking on Kentucky. They have to go to Lexington to face Kentucky. Women's volleyball, they lost their conference road opener, but they'll be back in action again on the 2nd versus Arkansas, and that's actually going to be in Ole Miss. So if you're in Oxford, go out there, support those ladies.
Which you should be in Oxford anyway for the Oxford-Memphis game, for the Ole Miss-Memphis game on Saturday.
That's right. Stay till Sunday.
Stay an extra day and enjoy some women's volleyball.
That's right, because they can use your support too. Not just the football team. These young ladies work their butts off.
And this is not only an SEC game, but this is Arkansas. They're right next door.
Exactly.
So this is a game Ole Miss always wants to win, regardless of sport. Whenever they're playing Arkansas, they want that victory.
You got to beat these teams, especially. The Lady Rebels golf team, they finished 7th after when they were at the Lady Paladin. Their next tournament's going to be on the 7th, actually, and that's going to be at the Ron Moore's Women's Intercollegiate. And then the men's golf team, we talked about them last week. They haven't played since, but they play on the 2nd as well. They go to the Marquette Intercollegiate. So, support all your Ole Miss. And now you got to go all the way to Wisconsin. That's going to be a nice little journey, but still. We're cheering on all of these guys and gals to go out there and just start whooping that ass and putting that Ole Miss Rebels stamp on every sport. That's what we want to see. That's why we support more than just a football program.
And we talked about that last week on the show was, that Ross Bjork, since he's taken over as athletic director, has really turned the entire university around as it pertains to sports programs.
Yeah.
You've seen a jump up. Of course, it's been a down year for women's soccer. But last year, women's soccer was off the charts. The volleyball team as well. We've seen the Ole Miss baseball team compete for spots in the not only the playoffs, but in the College World Series itself. Right. Of course, the football team under Hugh Freeze has perennially been in the top 25. I believe there's only been 1 week out of like the last 30 to 40 weeks that they haven't been ranked.
Exactly.
So this whole program for this university, sports-wise, is turning around and for the better.
And it's just good to see, and there's a fire with all of the sports teams in here, it's awesome. I just love what he's done with the programs. The whole athletic division anyway is just great. When we were on the campus a couple of weeks ago, it's just such a beautiful place. Again, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you haven't for some reason been down there to see this place, you just need to check it out. The Grove is insane.
And that's the cool thing. Like people, some people who don't live in the Oxford area, they think, if I'm going to go down there on game day, I need to be going to the game. That's not necessarily true.
That's right.
Go experience the Grove. You can actually spend your whole day in the Grove. People have tents set up with full spreads. They've got your proteins, your meats and whatnot, but they also have vegetables. If clean eating is your big thing, that's offered there. But there's several people out there, tens of people, hundreds maybe, that have televisions set up
so you can
to broadcast the game. You can still see the game, but you can actually enjoy the comfort of hundreds of other, if not thousands of other Ole Miss fans.
And here's the great thing about that. It's like a family when you go down into the Grove. I mean, they don't treat you like a stranger down there. That's for certain. And I think that's one of the often overlooked aspects of the Grove.
Right.
It's always consistently ranked as one of the premier places to go, not just tailgating in that sense because it's a unique experience, but to be down there and talk with other fans. It's like I said, it's just like a family atmosphere. Well, it depends on what your definition of family is, but it's a brotherhood. Maybe that's the atmosphere. We're including the ladies in that, but it was really a unique experience to go down there and do that. So, we're about to get into breaking down this Georgia Bulldog game, and really what's to break down to it. I mean, we just want to be honest. It was an ass whooping of epic and glorious proportions.
It was, this is what you wanted in this game. Of course, when we did our predictions, rather, I was thinking this was going to be close. I predicted it to be like a 3-point Ole Miss win. Of course, it ended up being a 31-point Ole Miss win, which I'll take every day.
That's right.
But, I expected a lot more fight out of a Georgia team that's been struggling.
I thought they were going to win by a good margin. I just didn't think it was going to be like this margin.
I just figured Georgia at some point would have sacked up and try to prove to people that there's a reason that they came into the season ranked 18, and they got up as high as 9th, I believe. But if it weren't for a couple of poor showings, they still would have been that high.
Yep.
But they had the poor showings. They were 11th, and now that Ole Miss came out there and laid the smackdown on them, they've dropped all the way down to 25 in the AP poll.
Yeah, they're lucky to still be in the top.
Right,
25.
they're hanging on by a thread right now.
So I don't see it, but you can look at these stats, and I was sitting here looking at these earlier, and it's just insane. Ole Miss scored 17 points in the first quarter, 14 in the second, 14 in the third, where they have been bad. You were talking about that last week, where they have just been awful in the third quarter, but they never stopped. They didn't score anything in the fourth quarter, but honestly, at that point, they had all backups in there. Georgia scored their points on the backups. I mean, that was what was really special about this win was they didn't just score their points against this first-team defense and stuff. That wasn't happening. It was really the backup players in there that they scored on.
I mean, you look at the final score, 45-14. That's really not indicative of how the game was because Ole Miss went on a 45-0 run.
Exactly.
Like you were saying, before the backups came in. And of course, Nick Chubb got hurt in the second quarter, which you hate to see since he came off that really bad knee injury last year.
Yeah.
I think he tore everything but his ACL last year.
I know it. Can't catch a break.
But he couldn't get anything going in this game, and really had struggled to get things going since the North Carolina game in the opener. But then Sonny Michel didn't do a lot. But and then, of course, Brian Harrion came in at the end of the third quarter, got a 10-yard touchdown. And then he grabbed another 1-yarder in the fourth.
Well, that's when a lot of their yardage came into play. When you look at the total yards and stuff that Georgia had, a lot of that happened in the second half, and especially in the last part of the game when Ole Miss and that was the thing about their offense too was even when they were scoring, they were still taking a little bit more time off the clock than they normally did, which was kind of awesome because it helps that defense out so much. And once they jumped up, their defense just started really teeing off, and they weren't playing conservative either. You know, we saw some of that too. We really didn't talk about that enough, I don't think. But as conservative as the offense was after they got up the first 3 games, their defense was just as conservative too. They were just playing, trying not to get beat, and they got beat. This one, their foot was on the throat as well as the offense's was. They were there hitting. Oh my God, they were just crushing folks. It was a total team effort. When you talk about a team effort and a team win and playing a full 60 minutes, this Georgia game was it. And if Ole Miss does this week in and week out, they're almost unstoppable.
You know, and Ole Miss has played 4 games this season. They've only had 2 takeaways, but both of those takeaways resulted in touchdowns. Last week, of course, Marquise Haynes, people said it was a targeting call against Alabama. Marquise Haynes crushed Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
And John Youngblood scooped up the ball and ran back for a touchdown. Well, in this game, in the first quarter, within the first 8 minutes of the game, Derek Jones, a former wide receiver, playing defensive back just because of how thin the Rebels are right now, got a 52-yard pick 6 off of young Jacob Eason.
And you look at the passing yards. Go ahead. I'll just finish that.
But these turnovers, they need to be a point of emphasis. When you can, their momentum, instant momentum.
That's right.
So they came off of a Gary Wunderlich field goal, and then less than a minute and a half later, boom, there's another pick 6. So you're up 10-0 with the quickness. So if they can keep that kind of stuff going, you know, get takeaways. I understand that if you do get a takeaway, it's never guaranteed that you're going to bring it all the way back to the house. But at least set your offense up in good position to where they can turn it into some kind of points.
Exactly. And like you were talking about those momentum builders, when you're talking about building momentum, what you're talking about is taking the heart out of your opponent, taking the will to keep fighting. And that's what we meant the last few weeks by saying Ole Miss has to keep their foot on that throat. Check out the other podcast we did. That is a resounding message week in and week out because it's true. Once you do that, it takes all the fight out of your opponent. Florida learned that the hard way Saturday.
Yes, they did.
When they let Tennessee come back in the second half, you know, the big joke was, Ole Miss, yeah, they're great through a quarter and 1 3/4. We even talked about that. But, you know, everybody was talking about it. And then Florida, I guess, did not think it was going to happen to them, and it sure did. It's just another example of why you cannot let up on a team if you want to win.
Florida straight up pulled an Ole Miss because they had a 21-point lead. They were up 21-0.
Yep.
Tennessee got a field goal before halftime. Ended up scoring, I think, 38 unanswered points before Florida finally scored again.
Nuts.
So, you know, Tennessee did to Florida what Florida State and Alabama did to Ole Miss early in the season. So
exactly.
But I liked Hugh Freeze at halftime. They had a huge lead. They were up 31-0. And the reporter asked, you know, Hugh Freeze, what do you think going into halftime for this game? He said, look, we have 3 other games that we can draw, we can learn from these situations of having these big leads at halftime. And I'm just going to go in and get them ready to come out and finish this game. You play for 60 minutes, which is what we've been saying for 4 weeks now.
Exactly.
Hugh Freeze said it verbatim on TV.
Hugh might be listening to the Fins Up podcast.
I hope he is.
I think he should be.
He's just supporting old high school
because we love you.
Counterparts.
That's right. Chad Kelly, I mean, you look at his numbers, 18 of 24 for 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and went deep, and he was only sacked once. And that was only a little 2-yard thing, and I think I vaguely remember that play, and it was more of a coverage thing than anything else.
Right, because he had stepped up in the pocket and looked like he was about to start running and just kind of got tackled.
Yeah, so, I mean, what a phenomenal game he had.
But that's what I've been saying about Chad since the season started. If he can minimize turnovers, and he had none in this game, and they went out there and just beat Georgia from pillar to post from start to finish.
Yep. Now he also had 53 rushing yards. Most of that was on that 41-yarder.
Right.
He ran out for a touchdown, which is
that 41-yarder alone tied Akeem Judd's total yardage for the game.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. But
As
but
we've talked about ad
really.
nauseum, Ole Miss does not have a running game. Chad Kelly is the lead rusher for this team.
But I think that was what was smart about that too, was they just figured Chad Kelly drop back pass, he might try this and that, but that play was perfectly called at the right time and executed, and there was nobody there to even remotely think about tackling him when that play happened. So yeah, it's great. It was so much fun to see. But here's the thing: it shows you the potential Ole Miss has and what they are capable of doing. Again, and we will hammer this damn point home when they play 60 minutes of football.
Right. And as much as we talked about Ole Miss needs to have these long drives, you've got to love the big plays like the 55-yard bomb to DeMarcus Lodge.
Oh, yeah, it's gorgeous.
You know, those plays will never stop being awesome because it really wasn't a clean pass. It was a little underthrown. He just fought for it.
And Chad Kelly was completing passes to everybody. That's how deep this wide receiver core is. We talked about this on the very first episode of Fins Up Podcast. We were talking about the strengths of Ole Miss and what they could do. You talked a lot about that receiving core and just how special they were. And they even mentioned it on the broadcast, even with Laquan Treadwell being gone, about how they're even more dangerous this year.
Right, because you still have Quincy Adeboye, you still have Demore Stringfellow. You got redshirt freshman Van Jefferson stepping into that slot role, and we've seen that he's been effective. But the big thing this year was, man, at 4th and 5th string, you had A.J. Brown and DeKalin Metcalf, a.k.a. DK. Of course, DK got hurt in that Wofford game with the foot injury. He's out for the year, but A.J. Brown has not missed a beat.
No, and they're rolling right now, so that's awesome. We're not going to spend any more time on Georgia because we don't really need to.
But I do want to mention one thing. The Evan Ingram touchdown. Granted, it wasn't a flashy touchdown or anything like that, but Evan's sister actually plays on the Georgia women's basketball team. So his touchdown celebration, he kind of he dribbled the ball a little bit and then shot it up. So
that was dedicated to her then.
Kind of a little dig to her there, which was awesome.
That's tough. We got to take a break real quick, give a little love to our sponsors. When we come back, we are breaking down Memphis. Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Are you tired of all the fad diets that get you nowhere except miserable? Cockrell Family Medical Center in Senatobia has just opened their new weight loss clinic. If you are serious about getting healthy and losing weight, then call 662-301-1128 to schedule your appointment. Cockrell Family Medical Center. Your health matters. We're about to get into Memphis. It is time. This is a revenge game. We talked about this at the first of the broadcast, and I have been waiting for this game all year. I know it's not a big marquee matchup or anything,
right,
but anytime you get beat by a team you should not get beat by, you can't wait to play that team again.
But, last year everything was set up perfectly for Memphis to win that game.
Yeah.
Ole Miss had only had one loss, and that was to Florida. Or they may have been undefeated. I don't really recall the order of those two games there. But, no, yeah, I believe they had the one loss to Florida. But I think Memphis was undefeated. Paxton Lynch was playing out of his mind. Justin Fuente was showing that, he belongs at a main Division I program.
Exactly.
And Ole Miss just had everything go against them. They started up 14-0, and then they had the turnovers.
Yep.
Of course, they put in Robert Kimdichie in a goal line situation to try to get a touchdown, and of course Memphis knew the ball was going to Robert Kimdichie.
They just tried to out-cute themselves.
Although he did have a nice tiptoe catch down the sideline and stayed in bounds for a touchdown, which was awesome. But he ended up getting a concussion in that game, which really hurt in the middle of that defensive line.
Yep.
And Paxton Lynch made every single throw he had to make last year.
Well, they have no Paxton Lynch anymore.
Right. They got Riley Ferguson, who he's not a bad quarterback, but he's not Paxton Lynch.
Exactly. So, I guess when you look at this Memphis game, and it has all the makings of a shootout if you go by their stats, and I think you've got those.
Yeah, you look at their passing offense, they're actually 26th in the country with they're averaging 293 yards through the air per game. Ole Miss on the other side is averaging 326.5, so they're 17th in the country. Rushing offense, of course, we know Ole Miss does not have a rushing offense. They rank 104, which is horrible, with 131.8 yards. But Memphis They're not much higher as far as the yardage. They average about 50 more yards at 185.3, but that's good enough to bump them up into the top 56. But passing defense here, Ole Miss has given up 203.8 yards through the air. It's 48th in the nation. Granted, they've played 3 top 11 teams in the first 4 games. Memphis, on the other hand, they're giving up 179.7, which is 26th in the nation, but they're not playing anyone.
Exactly. They're going to give up a lot more this weekend.
Right. They beat up Kansas, and they absolutely demolished Bowling Green. But rushing defense, of course, we've seen that Ole Miss has been on, their defense has logged a lot of minutes on the field this year. They give up 239.5 points a game, which is 116th out of, I think, 128. D1 teams are 129. And Memphis, on the other side, barely giving up 100 yards a game at 107, which is good for 24th in the country.
And you know what I saw last weekend, though, and I said we were going to talk about Georgia again, but I think you need to talk about the defense and how it seemed like they played more cohesively than they have been the first 3 games. I mean, they played like a total unit in this game.
Now, I think it goes back to that early Derrick Jones interception.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was a confidence builder because they hadn't gotten a takeaway in the Florida State game. They didn't get a takeaway in the Wofford game.
That's true.
Actually committed a turnover, but didn't get one. But then they got that forced fumble against Alabama, which helped them try to get things going back on the right track.
That's right.
But now that having that intercept, that pick 6 specifically early on in the game was a good momentum builder for them. And I think the defensive line was the most impressive part of that defense. Because they were blowing up the offensive line and weren't allowing any runs up the middle.
Absolutely.
Most of the short yardage or the short plays for Georgia weren't necessarily runs, even though they had 3 running backs over 50 yards. It was them doing short passes to Sony Michel out of the backfield, which is where a lot of that was their running game last week, which is impressive for a Georgia team, or for an Ole Miss defense going against a Georgia team that traditionally has been predicated upon their ability to run the football.
Exactly. Now, Ole Miss has jumped in the rankings again. They're back up to 16 in the AP poll, 17 in the coaches poll.
Which is a little disheartening. I understand they're the only 2-loss team in the top 25, so 16 sounds pretty good. But it's the fact of who they've played this season, and the fact that they beat the number 11 team like a drum, and they only moved up 5 spots in the rankings, whereas that Georgia team fell 14 spots for losing.
Yeah, I think when Ole Miss gets past Memphis, and I'm not saying if, I'm saying when they get past Memphis.
I agree wholeheartedly.
When they start rolling through these teams, and they keep playing, maybe these losses could have been the best thing that happened. It still sucks. But as far as team unity and really going in there and getting that chip on your shoulder going, this is ridiculous. We should have beat Bama. We should have beat FSU the first of the game. And we let those games go because we didn't play 60 minutes. I think you could see a team that could win completely the rest of their games.
Yeah, now we've seen that Arkansas is better than advertised. Texas A&M is a lot better than advertised. Even though A&M was kind of highly touted. Of course, they got the former Oklahoma quarterback Trevor Knight, who's doing great things for them. And they play a similar style to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
They air it out. But really what it's going to come down to in that game is defense and who can stop the other team.
That's right.
But, if they can get past those 2 teams, of course, LSU is a mess right now. They're a dumpster fire. They just lost their head coach and offensive coordinator. I'm trying to think of some other big, State lost to South Alabama. Yeah, they beat South Carolina, but they almost got beat by UMass this weekend.
Oh, I know.
Which was hilarious.
Crazy.
So Ole Miss has the potential and the ability to win out the rest of the season. And barring some miracle where Alabama loses to, if Alabama loses to Arkansas and loses to A&M and Ole Miss wins out, they win the West. They're in the SEC championship game. Now, that is
a stretch.
That is a stretch, yes, absolutely. But this Ole Miss team, if they win out, they're playing in one of the New Year's Six bowls.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So they still have an opportunity to have a big-time bowl. It's going to take a lot for them to win the West now, but still, I think if they'll just go in there and play football the rest of the way like they showed last weekend, they can do it. They're the only school in the country to have faced 3 top 15 opponents in the first 4 weeks of the season. Nobody else has that.
Right.
And that's another reason for all those people who want to say, well, it's not fair that Ole Miss lost 2 games and they're still even ranked. Yeah, it is, because you look at what we just talked about. Strength of schedule from these other teams has been really garbage. And that's why you see Georgia, with 1 loss, barely hanging in the top 25.
I mean, Alabama's the top team in the nation. Florida State is ranked 12th right now, but their 1 loss is to the number 3 team in the nation.
That's right.
And yes, they got beat badly, but that Louisville offense right now is ridiculous.
Louisville's beating everybody badly.
Lamar Jackson, I looked today, there are only 2 schools in the entire country that have more touchdowns than Lamar Jackson. One of those schools is the school that Lamar Jackson attends in Louisville. The only other school is Michigan. And then there's a 4-way tie after that for 25 touchdowns. Things like Texas Tech, 2 other schools, and then Lamar Jackson by himself.
That's crazy is what that is. Ole Miss, their record against Memphis is 48-11-2. So they won a lot of these. They won 6 straight until last year's debacle, which, again, they will make right this weekend. They've won 15 of the last 20 meetings. This is homecoming.
Right, which I didn't understand this booking, to use a wrestling term there. I didn't understand the booking of this, because how do you play 4 straight home games and your 4th home game is homecoming? Like, you've been at home. You're not coming home. You've been there.
I don't know how that works anyway. So I think it's just a great thing to do so people can dress up even more and party even more and just have a big celebration, which Ole Miss does as well as anybody in the nation, you have to say. So the Rebels have outscored opponents 41-6 in the first quarter and 107-33 in the first half, which tells you the second quarter is when they really start giving up their points.
Right at the end of the second quarter.
Exactly. So they have to carry over that 41-6. If they can do that in each quarter, oh my God, nobody can stop Ole Miss. They have the ability, they have the weapons, and we'll see if they do that. So what's your prediction this year? What do you think?
For the record?
For Saturday.
Oh, for Saturday.
Against Memphis, what's your score?
I'm going to say I think they'll take Memphis a little too lightly. Not super lightly. They show them what they can do against Georgia. I think we'll see a similar number here. I think it's going to be 49-17.
Oh, wow.
Ole Miss over Memphis.
I think it's going to be 45-24.
Okay.
I think Memphis probably get some garbage points. It may be even 45-31. It depends on just how loose they get in that fourth quarter, but I think Ole Miss wins this handily. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to be sitting here next week going, what the hell happened again? We don't want that. And you know what's not going to happen? Ole Miss is going to go in there, chip on the shoulder again to prove to everybody that just because that they're a legit 2-loss team and they are just going to whoop ass the rest of the season. I believe it and I feel it.
Of course, we talked about these receivers, and I think Chad Kelly's going to have a field day against Memphis.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And then, of course, I think the MVP of this Ole Miss offense, without a doubt, is Evan Ingram. Chad Kelly's going to get all the love because he's the quarterback, but Evan Ingram's the one who makes this thing go. He leads all tight ends in the country with 26 catches, 397 receiving yards. He's that kind of Jimmy Graham type player.
Yep.
In the sense that he is a tight end. He plays the tight end position, but he's got a wide receiver build.
Exactly.
He can line out wide like a wide receiver. He can he's too fast for linebackers to cover him, but he's too big for defensive backs to cover him.
That's right.
He's
a machine.
He is a mismatch machine. And he's ready to go off on any defense any week.
He will be playing on Sundays very, very soon. And Chad Kelly, we need to go ahead and mention this. He broke Eli Manning's school record by throwing a TD pass in 17 consecutive games.
Right. It's crazy to me how this guy came in. Of course, Ole Miss got him from a junior college from East Mississippi. Granted, he was a highly recruited quarterback that went to Clemson originally before he got dismissed from the team. But, man, Chad Kelly has stepped in and rewritten so many passing records for the school. It's insane to me to think how good this team could have been if they had him for 4 years. But, of course, the question then comes up, what about his maturity issues that he had at Clemson that led to him getting kicked off the team there at Clemson.
Yeah.
You know, and if he had those same issues, and had come straight to Ole Miss, had those issues, and got kicked out of Ole Miss, you know, went to community college, would he have come back to Ole Miss?
Yeah.
I think Hugh Freeze is big on second chances. But from what I've seen from a lot of players, especially watching Last Chance U, if you've seen that, you know, some of these kids like John Franklin III, who's now at Auburn, you know, that was his thing. He was like, man, I'm not going to Florida. I'm not going back to Florida State. I'm not going back. I'm like, well, dude, that's because you're a moron and you screwed it up. That wasn't on them. That was you. You did that.
Yeah, because that's kind of the biggest thing, too, is these kids have to take accountability, and they don't. It's still a blame game with some of them. That's what I like about Chad Kelly.
Because they've been treated like superstars their entire life.
Yeah, I mean, Chad Kelly's kind of owned up to his past. You know, and I still think that's a testament to Hugh Freeze and how he treats his players. He expects them to be accountable, and he treats them like men and adults. He doesn't treat them like kids. And if you screw up in his program, if he believes that you don't belong there, then you won't be there.
Absolutely.
So, and that's really how it's got to be. Well, we got to get out of here. We're looking forward to the game this weekend. Can't wait. Also, we have another podcast a lot of you guys may not know about. It's called Sports Clash Radio, where we break down sports from all over pretty much everywhere.
NFL, MLB, NBA, golf, you name it, we're going to probably cover it. We also covered WWE for any of you wrestling fans out there.
Yeah, we're about to do another podcast on it.
Right. Actually, right after this, that's what we're moving to. We're going to do our WWE weekend recap of their pay-per-view Clash of Champions, as well as a recap of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live.
And we've got a whole college podcast coming up with Sports Clash Radio. Our shows are done. So we'll talk about NFL in one podcast. We'll talk about PGA, MLB, like you said, wrestling, college football, where we cover the whole top 25 in college football, what's going on, the hot topics. Les Miles getting canned. We talk about that in our latest podcast that just hit the ground yesterday. So check it out. You can go to patreon.com/sportsclash. All of our stuff is right there. The videos, if you want to see those, you can check that out. If you just want to listen to the audio, you can check that out.
With the Patreon page there, guys, for those of you who aren't familiar with Patreon and what it is, like, you can go to YouTube and you can actually watch this podcast if that's your thing, if you like watching the videos. You can do it that way, but with Patreon, we actually have special videos that you can only get on that site if you are one of our patrons. And there's a reward system. So you don't have to donate a lot to the show. It can just be $1 a month, or it can be $5, $10, $20, what have you. But the more you donate, then you get special perks. You get access to special videos that we do. Like, we did a blooper reel last week that was hilarious. We're also going to do Sports Clash Radio t-shirts. At the higher reward packages, we'll have a Sports Clash Radio polo that we're going to give away specifically to those patrons of ours. So go in there, get involved. If you like this thing, you know, if you like a higher production value, which is what we want to give you.
We want a whole studio. That's what we're working towards.
We're trying to get a studio. We're trying to take Sports Clash Radio out on the road and
Wouldn't it be great to do a Fins Up podcast right there in the Grove?
Right. I mean, that would be incredible. And those donations to Sports Clash Radio can also help make Fins Up podcast better.
That's right. So give what you can. Visit our page. Check it out. Keep supporting us. Hey, if you want us to do a show from your tent down the Grove, let us know. We'll be happy to do it.
And we're also on Facebook at Sports Clash Radio. We're on Twitter at Sports Clash RAD, because Twitter limits your characters there.
That's right. We're still rad, which is awesome.
Follow us, like us, subscribe to us, whatever it is. You know, copy, share it, whatever. Get the word out that Sports Clash Radio is the thing. It's going on. And we're doing very specific episodes each week for whatever your interest is. College football, pro football, Major League Baseball, the playoffs are coming up. NBA is about to get started. The PGA Tour just wrapped up. They're about to start the Ryder Cup this weekend. We talked about that yesterday.
Lots of good stuff going on. Also, if you haven't followed us on Facebook on Fins Up Podcast, do that. Twitter, do that as well. There's too many good things around here. We're trying to change the face of sports radio in our area. As everybody in this area knows, in the South around Memphis, pretty much what we have is garbage. We don't have a lot anymore. It's really sad because there's so much to talk about, so much going on. We'll check you guys out later.
We're putting in the work
That's right.
Make it worth our while.
Exactly. Give us some feedback. We need to know. We need to know what you like, what you don't like.
If you want us to do something differently, let us know. We're not above constructive criticism.
Definitely not.
Now, if you just come at us with some hate, we're going to tell you to get lost.
But if you're actually giving us something that might make this show better, and there's probably a lot of things we could do to make this show better. So let us know. We don't get offended at that sort of thing. We take that very much. And take that advice and take it to heart and pay attention to it, because we want to give you guys the show you want to hear. So we got to get out of here. We're running overtime. We'll check you guys later. Hotty toddy and fins up.